All right, here we go. Today we have Louis Ziskin, one of the largest ecstasy importers in U.S. history. Working with the Chinese triads, the Dutch and Italian mafia, he trafficked over 40 million ecstasy pills before he was busted, in what was then the biggest DEA bust in U.S. history. And after he was arrested, he was facing a life sentence where he famously represented himself. Louis Ziskin, welcome to Vlad TV.
Hey, Vlad, thanks for having me.
Very, very interesting story. So I want to start at the very beginning. So you grew up in West Hollywood.
Grew up in West Hollywood, Gardner Street. Went to Gardner Street Elementary School.
So mom and dad were divorced, but you had a fairly stable home.
Yeah, I saw other kids who had really crazy home situations. In my home, there was my mom and my grandmother, her mother were there all the time. And, my dad was in and out, but we never questioned whether our parents loved us and my grandparents, my dad's parents, were very supportive and helpful and everything. And there was always a ton of love and supervision.
Okay, so you're a regular kid in LA, you graduate high school, and you get to USC, which is a top university. But then you drop out. Why?
So back then, in order to get into the business college, you had to take a liberal arts course first. And one of those classes was a business ethics class. Now, not business law, not contract law, not any of that, business ethics. And, I saw so here's a guy who's telling me how not legally, but ethically to do, $1 million business deals, right? And I saw him in the parking lot at school in his polyester pants and his busted seam topsiders and getting into a beat up 20-year-old Honda. And I was like, this dude ain't teaching me nothing. And I never went back to class after that.
Seriously, that was why you dropped out.
That was the moment I had the realization. I mean, I was already selling weed to all the sororities and fraternities. I got to skip the rush week thing because I was already in everywhere. They were, fucking the Tri-Delts were calling me at 2:30 in the morning to sneak over to bring them weed. So I already had access that, most people didn't get or had to put up with that whole, freshman, whatever year of nonsense. I got to skip all that. I went to all the best parties and everything, and I was making money. And so that combination of events, but that was the final catalyst. It was like, there's nothing for me here.
Okay, so you drop out of school and then you move to Florida?
No, I drop out of school and then I do some, I'm beating around. I got into these traveler's check things. So the Canon Color laser copier comes out. A friend of mine, Damon Kidwell, works at Kinko's. He's putting himself through Cal Arts at the time. He's super excited about this machine because in the graphic design world, when this color copier came out, it was like a big deal. So he tells all of us, a bunch of friends go over there to check him out at work down in Santa Monica, and everybody's looking and going, ooh, at this color copy machine, which sounds funny now. Everybody has one in their bedroom, but back then it was a major thing. And so anyway, everybody goes back over to Damon's desk. I take a dollar bill out of my pocket and I copy that. And I was like, oh, okay. So the next day I went to, I believe it was Thrifty's, and I bought a Erasermate pen. And then I went to Bank of America and I bought traveler's checks. I signed them with the Erasermate pen, 3 $100 traveler's checks. Signed them with the Erasermate pen, and then when I walked out, I erased them, put them on a clear piece of plastic Mylar, and started making copies.
So you're making fake checks?
Yeah, I was making counterfeit traveler's checks.
Okay, for what amounts?
$100, then $500. And back then, people treated traveler's checks like cash. So
right.
You go to the store, you buy a carton of smokes was $20 back then, and you get $80 in change. So actually, the craziest part was the more shopping you did, the more cash you had.
So how many checks did you print out?
Oh, millions.
Millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, 100 sheets at $300 a sheet is 30,000. It took 46 minutes to print 100 pages, so that's 30 grand. But now you up them to $500 checks. and it's 15. It's 150 grand in the same 46 minutes.
Okay, so you're doing this, what, after the shop is closed or?
No, I
whatever
found
else?
I wouldn't do it at the place where my friend worked. I found another place that had it, that was a smaller mom and pop place. And we made this whole fucking bullshit story about travel agent marketing, this, that, the other thing. And I went in there and, they'd let me use the machine and I was paying them like a ridiculous thing, like $2, $5 a copy it was back then, actually.
Huh.
Later on, it came down to $2 when they started having them at CopyMat, and then you could just kind of go in there. But at this point of it, so at first they were watching us like a hawk, right? And then after 3-4 days, when they'd get paid at the end of every day and the count was right and everything, they started leaving.
Okay, so
So
they had no idea you were even copying checks.
No, they had no idea I was even copying checks. Now, later on, when they got the machine serviced, they found out. Because what I didn't realize is you leave kind of a trail. Somebody who's servicing the machine can tell that because you print the backs first because they have less ink, so they won't stick to the drum when you flip the paper over and print the other side, right? But you're leaving that, it's the same thing over and over again. It left a trail. So they knew what was happening, but instead of stopping us, they got into the business themselves as well.
Oh.
So when a friend of mine got busted over there, with the owner, they busted him with the traveler's checks, but then they found the owner with a bunch of plates and doing his own bills and traveler's checks at the same time. And fortunately, I wasn't there that day, and so I escaped. And then, I moved to CopyMat.
Okay. So did you get busted for this at all?
Oh yeah, I got busted for it. There was another guy. I started selling the checks because I got lazy, which was stupid. Selling them for 15, 20 cents on the dollar. And another guy, we went to IKEA furniture, and I don't know, back then, I haven't been to an IKEA in a long time, but back then there'd be like 30 cash registers. So we were going through every register with 2 U-Haul trucks outside, filled it up with furniture, leather couches, everything, right? Hit them really hard, close to 100 grand. At IKEA in, early 90s, it's a big thing, right? Well, anyway, we go to IKEA again the next weekend in City of Industry. And we walk in and I can tell right away, it's like, wow, this place is hot as fuck. Like, the guy who was working at the ice cream bar didn't look like someone who works at the ice cream bar. And I told my friend, I was like, do not the other guy who was there with me, do not do anything here. Just walk around for 5 minutes and then we're going to leave. Separate. Well, he thought he knew better and he went and used a check. And then I left. I had this little folio where I kept the checks and the IDs and everything. And I stashed that in IKEA and walked out, and the guy we had who was driving the van for us was outside too, and out in the parking lot they got us also, and then they found the folio, and then I was in LA County.
Charged with what?
Forgery, commercial burglary, all kinds of charges like that.
Right, but they had no idea how many times you've been doing this.
No, they didn't, because it wasn't the Fed. So what happened was, and when we first got arrested, it was no bail, right? And, LA County back then, guys who'd been to LA County when there was still 9,000 floor, 9,500, it was a fucking nightmare, right? Especially for a white Jewish kid. Just, it's just nonstop fucking drama. You're going to get beat up a couple times. It's just the way it's going to go every time or you're going to be a pussy and not fight back at all, which is going to make it worse, right? It's just what it is. There wasn't a lot of white guys there, and that's LA County. So anyway, I get called to court, which sucks because when you get pulled out, you have to process all the way back in. So I didn't want to go. I was already in 3600 module. And I didn't want to go back through the 9,000 floor. And anyway, I get to court, and my mom's there. John Rantz was the attorney. He was out of Orange County. He passed away, but he was great. And I was like, what the fuck? I don't have court, this, that, the. He's like, just shut up. Whatever happens, just shut up. Don't fucking say anything unless I tell you to, and everything's going to be fine. There was a rookie DA that was subbing for the regular DA who was out on vacation or wherever the fuck he was. And this dude gave us bail. So we get bail, and I went and saw the other lawyer, Phil Israels. And he's like, oh, they have a case and da-da-da. And then I saw John again, and he was like, listen, man, it'll be easier. I can't advise you to run, but my job would be easier if you weren't around. I mean, that's just a fact. And I was like, okay. So I went over to UCLA. I got a Eurail pass out of the student union for 3 months, first class, packed up a backpack and some cash, and I took off. Missed my court dates. Now I'm a fugitive. Well, the prosecutor gets back, and he's so mad at this rookie that like he doesn't want the shit on his face, right? The feds are assuming I had no bail, so they hadn't bothered to put a hold on me yet. Computerization isn't what it was now back then, right? And and so anyway, this rookie gets stuck with the case. Now I'm his case. So my lawyer goes back to him and tells him, hey, I can get him back for you, and make you look good and everything, right? And we'll even plead him guilty to a couple extra charges to make you look good. But what we need from you is you get a PPT, because now they had done the investigation. A PPT is all the other states that the checks were passed in would agree to whatever sentence California gave me. And we agreed to a year county lit, right?
That's it.
Yeah, because he figures I still potentially have a Fed case for counterfeit, right? So, and back then it was a different time. Like you got less time. This is before all the draconian sentencing laws, right? Like early 90s, 91, I think this was. Anyway, so we pled guilty to possession of fraudulent securities, uttering fraudulent securities, all the charges that the feds would have had to use that weren't charged initially were the extra charges that my lawyer gave this prosecutor so that he looked better. Well, that blocked the feds from charging me. So anyway, I get a year in the county, and I hit the lottery. After 65 days, I got county parole. So I did 65 days for all that, and it was pretty quick. First couple of weeks, I was at the East LA substation as a trustee. Then I was at Biscaloo Center, which was almost like a summer camp. And I was actually working on the firing range, because I didn't have criminal history. And fact is, you're white, and the cops, okay, yeah, put him here, right? Like they give you these there wasn't any black dudes that were working on doing the targets at the firing range, right? Or Mexicans or anybody else. And the cops there were actually pretty fucking decent. They'd bring pizza and burgers in, and I could bring smokes back in, which was, economy.
Okay, so 65 days for forging millions of dollars in cashier's checks. Okay, well, some people would have learned their lesson, but not you.
Well, I learned my lesson to a degree that, be careful who you associate with. There was a lot of lessons I learned, but not the lesson of I wasn't scared straight, obviously.
Right.
And, that didn't come till much later when there was much bigger chips on the line. But I learned, I did get educated in county. I learned a lot of game in there from a lot of guys, all different races. Once I was sentenced and I was in East LA substation as a trustee, and then in Biscaloo Center just doing my time. And they didn't send me to Wayside. They had BC open then. You meet a lot of guys, and when they heard my case, to them, that was really interesting. That wasn't your typical case that was in there. So a lot of guys wanted to talk to me about how did you do this? How did you do that? And as you're having those conversations, they kind of school you about how shit on the street that I'd never thought about really works. And, you kind of put that, I tell everybody, any business that you ever starts because you have a piece of information and then you hear something or see something or have an idea and you're able to put the pieces that you have together to form a puzzle. It doesn't matter whether it's criminal or legitimate. It's all the same, right?
True.
Like a guy's not going to go make an app that can't write code or doesn't have a friend or a contact that can make code. Like whatever connections you have is you build your businesses around if they're going to be successful usually.
Okay, so now you're out of the counterfeit business.
Yeah.
What's the next hustle?
Next hustle is a real estate hustle in Florida.
Okay.
Working for a guy named Judah Hertz. He had a 13499 Biscayne Boulevard, a building called Sailboat K. It had 180 units. And when you do a successor developer thing, meaning you're going to convert those apartment units into condos, once you sell half of the condos, the person who did the conversion now has to start paying the HOA for the remaining units that haven't been sold yet. Add to that a hard money loan at 16% from Yale Mortgage. And Judah Hertz was like, he offered me $100,000 to put the building in my name, rent those units out, collect as much money as I could, and declare bankruptcy.
Okay.
So I get there and, I learned this is actually how Judah Hertz, Ike Gamble, Sonny Khan, before he really became a different person. Now he's a religious guy that's very straight and narrow. But back in the day, all these guys were, that's what they did. The scam was, hey, you go in to an apartment building and you tell the people, hey, you're paying $1,000 a month rent and you're never going to own anything. I'll give you $10,000 in cash and you'll pay $800 a month rent on a mortgage where you're going to own. Now, who doesn't take that deal? Mm-hmm. Everybody takes it. Now, how do you make that happen? Well, let's say the condo's $60,000 back then is what you need for it. Well, you say that the condo's $80,000 and you've already gotten a $20,000 deposit, which is 25%. So now or $10,000 deposit, which was the qualifier, or $12,000, whatever it is. Now the bank is going to give $70,000 on this $60,000 condo. So you cut back 10 to the tenant, who's now the owner, who's happy as can be because even if they've got a shitty front end interest loaded loan that's going to take them forever to pay off and their total amount of payoff is way more than it should be, they're still paying $800 a month mortgage instead of $1,000 a month rent. So, it's infinitely better even that it's bad. And that's how they built out all of Miami, all those buildings, all those condo buildings, that's how they did that in the 80s, 90s.
Okay. So
I'm out with a couple girls. I bump into this Venezuelan dude, Mauricio Vivas, good guy. He's in the emerald business. And instead of doing all that nonsense, I sell him the remaining 78 units. He buys them. He becomes a successor developer. I'd learned by reading like what the whole thing was, is I told Mauricio, he's like, oh, I don't want to pick up and pay the HOA and this and that. And that was a deal point. And all these guys who were doing millions of dollars in real estate and, big dudes in the game, Judah, Mauricio, all the people that were around, none of them actually read the law a little bit. Anyway, I read it. I was like, bro, just take only 5 units per entity. Make a bunch of entities and take 5 units per entity. And then you don't become the successor developer because you need to own a minimum of 6 units for this law to apply.
So he's right under the threshold.
Yeah. So he made a bunch of entities, right? And each one took 5 units. And then when he sold, as he sold the units, he would give me $1,600 a piece for a 2-bedroom and $1,000 a piece for a 1-bedroom.
Okay. So how did this thing ultimately fall apart?
No, that thing was fine. It didn't.
So it was a totally legal business, more or less.
Yeah. I did it legally instead of the illegal way that the clean people wanted it done.
Okay. So why not just stick to that?
Well, I didn't have any more buildings that were in that situation to do that. And not only that, this guy, Omar Al-Kiyami, calls me and asks me what I'm doing this summer. And so I got a Porsche convertible. I got some money in my pocket. I'm in Miami. I'm like, oh, I don't know. He's like, why don't you come to Saint-Tropez? And I'm like, dude, I ain't going anywhere where it's fucking $80 for a bottle of water, right? Like, I've never been there, but that's like the stories you hear about the place back then. He's like, no, just bring some girls like you introduced me to in LA a couple years ago, and we'll pay for everything, flights, everything. We got a beautiful house, the whole fucking thing, right? Like, you'll have a car, all the clubs, everything, we'll go out. I was like, bro, I'm not a fucking pimp. Like, I can't promise you that you're gonna fuck the chicks. And he's like, no, you just promise us that you won't bang them. And you can bang anybody else you want, but just promise us that you won't bang them. And I'm like, okay, immediately I'm like, all right, that's easy, funny. Already banged 2 of them, no big deal, right? So I talked to some girls I know and take them out there. We end up having a great time. And I end up meeting a bunch of, I meet the Al-Tour family. I meet a bunch of Saudis, Emiratis, Asian. It's the biggest, it's the biggest conglomeration of wealth on the planet in that month, in Saint-Tropez at that time, right? It's just, all the hottest hookers, all the biggest boats, all the whole thing. I mean, it's really like, wow. So anyway, I meet a bunch of them, and this one, Rashid Al-Tour, he wanted me to leave the table I was with and start hanging out with him and, bring the girls with me. And I was like, dude, you got me fucked up. Like, why would I disrespect my friends who are taking care of me like that? And what makes you think anyway that those girls are going to follow me? Because they're having a great time with the guys. Like, they were nice to them. It wasn't like they weren't fucking creepers or anything. They were young guys who all had family money and they were having a great time, drinking, partying, everything. So anyway, he's like, we see they follow you wherever you go. We know what the deal is, da-da-da. And I was like, bro, I would never disrespect somebody that treated me the way they treated me. Like, you're being disrespectful. And I just got up and left. Now, this dude, I didn't know at the time, but the Al-Tour family in the UAE is like a big deal. Anyway, he next day he sends one of his minions over to me. Oh, and they're calling him the Sheikh. The Sheikh is sorry, he wants to apologize, this, that, the other thing. And I'm game. Okay, cool. Fucking Jewish kid, Sheikh wants to apologize. Let's go see what's happening. I'm full of myself at this time. So anyway, I should tell you a funny story about cranberry vodka with this guy. But anyway, so I get back to his table and he's like, hey, I'm sorry, I didn't mean any disrespect. How about after your trip here, we're going to be in London. Why don't you guys come to London and hang out with us before you go home? And I was like, I'll ask the girls, we'll talk about it. Da-da-da. Next day, I tell them, yeah, they said, yeah, no problem, we'll check it out. And then they brought me a bunch of money in fucking envelope. It was like some crazy amount of money. I was like, I don't know, translated to maybe fucking 35 grand. Okay. For 4 plane tickets from Nice to London, though. That's it. That's all it was, right? And I don't remember, it was in francs, but it was a lot of money. Because when I told the girls, they're like, okay, cool. If it doesn't work out, we can get our own rooms and then tickets home. No problem. Great. Because we're going to burn the tickets that we have back home now, right? And okay, cool. So I get his number, and a week later, we get to London. We go to the Dorchester Hotel, like he said. And no, not the Dorchester. Mayfair Hotel. What's the one? Is it There's a bigger hotel in Mayfair. I forgot what it's called. It might be the Mayfair Hotel. No, it is the Dorchester. That's right. Lanesborough was the other hotel I'm thinking about. Dorchester Hotel. Anyway, we get there and, he's not there. And, you know, we asked the front desk, hey, is Rashid Abtouri? We're trying to call, no answer. So we go to the hotel to check. Get there, ask for Rashid Abtouri. They say, no, he's not here. But they say, are you Lewis? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, oh, we have your rooms ready. We have 4 beautiful rooms. Anyway, these guys get back a couple of days later. We have a great time. And they're like, you know, the girls go home. And they asked me to stay. Rashid asked me to stay. We end up hanging out, becoming friends and, you know, talking. And he's like, you know, why don't you come to UAE? And I was like, bro, listen, man, I'm not at your level. I don't have your kind of money. Like, I have to go back home and get back to the paper chase. Like, you know, this has been a longer summer than I expected. I spent way more. And he was like, yeah, well, listen, don't worry about that. We're going for Ramadan. Come right after. Stay here. My guest with my friends. We take care of everything. Just go out and meet girls. And so next time we're in London, we can have some parties. And so anyway, I end up fucking running around London to all like the top clubs, access everywhere for a month. And I met a lot of people. And some of the people that I met happened to be Chinese who were, you know, kind of running things. They actually were underneath one of the families there, but they were, wouldn't call them a spin-off. I would call them a subsidiary. You know, Europe's a little bit different than here. You can't just go set up on the street corner and start selling dope. Those territories have been divided forever. And even if they're enemies with each other, they will band together to make sure nobody new is doing their thing. That's just the way it is. So everybody's with somebody. Anyway, so these guys, you know, they're clubs, security, got the whole cover, everything, and, you know, having a party one night, and they had some shitty yellow cocaine. Now, I know some people are going to say that yellow cocaine is great, but not all yellow cocaine is great. This was the shitty kind. And I was like, hey, you're running shit. I thought you guys are running shit. What the fuck is this? This is garbage. And they're like, oh, you taking the fucking piss, mate. Da, da, da. You can do better, this and that. And I was like, of course, I'm from LA. Of course I can do better. I didn't even have a fucking connect right at the time for big amounts of cocaine. And they're like, okay. And anyway, that's how it started. Okay. So I get home. I go to a friend of mine, Simon Mihailov. And he gets me a couple kilos. And we send them. And that's how it started.
Send them how?
FedEx.
So you put a bunch of kilos in FedEx boxes.
Well, it was 2. And what I did was I went to Rexall Drugs, which is, I don't know what it is now, but it's right across the street from the Beverly Center at Beverly and La Cienega. And I went there and I bought a police car and a fire engine, you know, the kind that kids play with. Opened up the boxes, unscrewed them, and put half a kilo in each one, got 4 of them, and shipped them. To a friend of mine who was out of town, front desk. So anyway, the front desk dude, you know, gets them, and then I fly there, end up paying him, get those, sell them. Now I got to bring the money back. And that's how it started. And then I went into a pretty big amount because the first 2 got through, but then, you know, I got more. And then I was getting credit from a guy because I had a guy, Simon had introduced me to someone. So now I had my own connect. Turns out I'd known this guy from before. So it was almost like came with a built-in credit history, right? And next thing you know, I'm 600 grand in debt because I've lost 40 keys to customs shipping them.
Okay, when you lose them in customs, though, don't they track who sent them and people
but
start getting busted?
Then, the tracking wasn't the same as it was now. If you wanted to track a package, you had to call 1-800-GO-FedEx and give them a tracking number. There was no IP addresses to track. As long as you had a fake ID when you went and dropped it off at like a mailbox place, right? Like you're cool. And then what I was doing is down by the 10 freeway in Robertson back then was the FedEx office. And people used to be standing there at 5 o'clock, line out the block, standing there with their FedExes trying to make the cutoff. So I was literally copying their account numbers down so I wouldn't even need an ID or pay cash, right? Like anymore. I would just charge the FedEx account number. So that's how we were getting the accounts. Literally, I'd go there with a FedEx envelope, act like I'm filling out my own thing, and I'm literally copying 4 or 5 numbers a few times a week. And then after a while, I'm sending just people down there to do it, right? So we ended up with big companies. Some of them actually ended up testifying against me because they called them in to say, hey, you're so-and-so company, like we'd gotten Sony's thing. We'd gotten Ubisoft, big companies. And some of them actually came in to testify that they didn't actually send drugs. It must have been us, right? And anyway, but I was still missing one critical piece, and that was customs and duties. Because now that I'm sending bigger amounts, 5s and 10s at a time, you're spending $300-$400 to send 10, 20 pounds overnight, and you're putting 0 customs value. Because I had no idea of international shipping at that time. Anyway, 0 customs value, and Her Majesty's Customs and Excise is looking in the box going, what would you spend $400 to ship overnight that weighs 20 fucking pounds that it has no value to us? Whatever you put on the customs declaration, right? And anyway, so on a Monday, some guys show up at my place, in bed with my fiance, and to remind me that I owe $600,000 on a Friday. And I'm like, look, I'm not going to have it. Take me to see the dude right now. So anyway, they take me, and I'm worried. I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to tell this motherfucker my business. He's going to want a piece of the action. Like, this is what I'm worried about.
Okay, so who is this connect that's providing you all the cocaine at that point? You owe the $600,000.
Well, I call him Carlos always in podcasts, but I've never shared his real.
Okay, this was the cartel?
He's not, but he was getting it from them.
From which cartel?
Sinaloa.
Sinaloa, so the Mexican cartel.
Yeah.
So this is the go-between between you and the Sinaloa cartel.
Yeah, I didn't understand that at the time. It wasn't until much later that I understood that, right? Like, but, okay. I just don't want to give the wrong impression like I thought like I had a cartel connection, because later on I tried to eliminate the middlemen by paying them to introduce me directly, because I had other ideas for bigger quantities that I wanted to talk to them about, and I could never actually get there. So just want to be clear about that and not misrepresent it. Also, I should say at this point, I never worked with Pablo Escobar, and I've lost more fights than I've won, just to be clear.
Okay. Okay, so now you're being taken to the guy that you owe $600,000 to in cocaine.
And this is the guy that I knew from before that Simon had introduced.
Okay, so you have a relationship with him.
Yeah. And he's known me for years, right? And he's like, hey, what's going on? Are you getting ripped off? This, that, the other thing, right? Like, he's trying to help me. And because I'm there early, which is unusual. Most people are on the run or in the wind. They have to track them down. And he's like, are you getting ripped off? Is somebody putting the arm on you? I'll help you out. What's going on? Just tell me who, and we'll go take care of it. I was like, no, it's not like that. And then I tell him what's going on. And instead of him being excited and wanting a piece of my business, he gets fucking mad. He's like, you're double fronting my shit outside the fucking country on FedEx? Like, what the fuck? You owe $600,000. How the fuck are you going to pay that? And I was like, well, he's like, what am I supposed to do here? And I was like, well, give me 10 more.
10 more bricks.
Yeah, and he fucking smacked me. And this was the first moment that I thought, oh, this might not work out, Anyway, he leaves the room, and I'm like really sitting there sweating. I'm thinking like at any minute somebody's gonna walk up behind me and put a gun to my head, and that's that, right? Like, and it hit me like a ton of bricks, because up until that moment, I'd never considered that it wasn't going to go good, because I'd never found myself in a situation that I couldn't get myself out of in my life to that point. Anyway, he comes back in the room about several minutes later. He's got an Adidas bag, zipper bag, and he sits down and he's like, Louis, you have a good face. You didn't make me come find you. I've known you for a long time. Do not ship my shit overseas. You bring back every penny that you sell this for. We're going to get you a discount, and we're going to cut out money for your monthly expenses for living, and you're going to work this off. And I was like, okay. And now there's no cell phone then. I don't have a wallet. I didn't have anything on me. I literally put on my pants and walked out the door. So I got this bag, right? And I'm thinking it's 10. Anyway, I'm outside in the middle of fucking Silver Lake back then, which isn't like Silver Lake now, right? It's not a good area. Wasn't a great area back then, right? Anyway, I'm in the middle there and I've got this bag and I fucking, for the first time I look inside when I'm outside and it's got 20 of them in it, not 10.
20 kilos.
Yeah. And I call my friend, Collect, to tell him, hey, I'm coming. I need money for a taxi. Meet me, at my place. So he's like, oh, bro, $20 for a taxi was like, we were tight because we'd lost a lot of money. I was like, bro, I'm just telling you. Like, okay, I'll be there. So he meets me there, taxi, pays the taxi. We go upstairs. I show him and he's like, okay, what are you going to do? And I was like, I'm going to send him.
Overseas?
Like, yeah.
Again?
Yeah.
After being told not to.
He's like, you're fucking crazy, man. You're going to fucking die. This isn't a game. These people are serious. What the fuck is wrong with you? Anyway, I got in a huge fight. I send 10 and I got to lose them.
Really?
Anyway, I break off a corner of one of the 10 that's left. I sell it right away, put food in the fridge, pay a couple bills just to give myself some space for a few days to figure out how I'm going to avoid dying. Okay. Right? And buy a bag of weed. And, just fucking getting stoned, eating candy, drinking fucking soda. And, I had my girlfriend go home. Didn't want anybody around me. I just, it was just a weird thing. I just wanted space. And there was while these guys were going to be at me next week for whatever I'd sold, there was no immediate pressing issue on me. And so, of course I was super productive. I smoked weed and ate candy bars. Anyway, it hits me. I'm watching fucking TV, wake up, watching TV all crazy hours of the night, 3 in the fucking morning. And it hits me like a bolt of lightning. There's a box, and I'd seen this box on the FedEx form that says charge taxes to FedEx account number. Okay. So I wouldn't even have to pay the taxes. So I go the very next morning, I put the 9 3/4 in a box. I send FedEx and I put charge taxes to FedEx account number, and I declare the value. I think it was like $400 or $500 I put, right? Mm-hmm. Sailed right through. Anyway, I fly over there, sails right through. I fly over there. I get paid. I smuggle the money, smuggle the money back. That's how it started.
Okay, so 10 kilos, how much you make off that?
Oh, I made 22,000 pounds a piece. Smuggled the money to Amsterdam. Buy pills. Ended up getting almost 250,000 pills. All these numbers change later, so I want to be accurate. Get almost 250,000 pills and send them back same way. They all land. I sell about half of them right away. Back then they were going for about $7 a piece wholesale. I sell about half of them right away. And instead of taking the 900 G's that I owe the dude back, I buy $600,000 worth of coke from one of their competitors. I buy 40 more keys. I ship those, they all make it. And that's how I went from down 900 G's to up $3 million in 2.5 weeks.
Wow.
And then kind of never looked back.
Okay, so you pay back your Connect.
Yeah.
Had you not paid him back, let's just say that next shipment got lost. Bullet in the head?
I think it was going to be, yeah. I don't think it was going to be good. But I was so sure when the tax thing hit me, because it was the only thing that made sense, why I'd gotten the smaller packages through in the beginning and all the bigger packages later didn't go through. Right? Like, remember, there's no internet to research this shit. So all you have is the data from your own experiences. Right? Like, and I didn't have a background in shipping. I didn't have a friend who was a freight forwarder. I didn't have any of that stuff at that time. Later on, we got guys who worked at FedEx. We had people inside. We knew, we had warnings, all kinds. Once you have money, you're able to expand your connection base, relatively easily. But at that point, it was the only thing that made sense to me. And I was just sure that they're going to get their tax money and they're going to leave my box alone. And that's exactly what happened. And we never lost cocaine again for 2.5 years after that.
So how much cocaine did you ship through FedEx for 2.5 years?
Well, according to the government, it was 2 to 3 tons.
2 to 3 tons of cocaine.
But it was
through
much
FedEx,
less.
just
So
regular
that's
boxes?
government numbers.
Okay.
That's government numbers. Yeah, because then you start, you're putting 20 in a box, and then you're putting 3 boxes per air bill.
Huh.
Right? So we were doing the same thing. And as long as we were using FedEx to come back for pills, we were doing the same thing also. You're sending pills back, 60,000 pills or 40,000 pills in a box, and you're putting 3 boxes per air bill, like it was just sailing through. Because we had accounts. We weren't using mailbox, etc.
Huh.
Right?
Okay, so are you exclusively selling overseas, or are you actually selling drugs in the U.S. as well?
Well, I'm selling ecstasy in the U.S.
Okay, so cocaine overseas, ecstasy U.S.
Yeah, because if you send cocaine over there, you have to bring cash back.
Uh-huh.
Well, that's a free felony. You can lose that cash. And then when it gets here, which we've done several times, you have to sell the pounds for dollars. That means ID, trail all over town, and more percentage lost. Whereas if you ultimately what ended up happening is we started trading. A kilo was worth 32,000 pills to me. Ultimately, once we got the system fully up and running, and we were trading the cocaine to the Chinese for the oil that all the refineries in Belgium and Netherlands used. And we took over those refineries because we were the ones that had the gas for their car. So it turned out to be 32,000 pills a kilo for us. Me and Tamer, by the way, my co-defendant, Tamer Ibrahim.
Okay, so you're basically, instead of buying pills, you're using cocaine to purchase pills, those 2 illegal transactions that are happening.
And so now when the pills come back, it's not a free felony anymore because you're making money for your risk. And then when you sell the pills, they're being sold for dollars. So you don't have the exchange problem anymore. So you've eliminated the free felony, and you've eliminated the paper trail, and you've eliminated a percentage loss for conversion and turned it into an asset by, 5xing, actually 10xing your money again.
Right. And I guess in Amsterdam, they actually create the ecstasy, or they...
No, so when the Soviet Union fell, the Soviet bloc countries fell, one of the things that happened is they didn't pay their scientists anymore. So these guys started making the stuff there, right? That was the first iteration of it. And then what would happen in the Netherlands and Belgium is there'd be a refining process there.
Right, for the oil?
That's where they pill press it. But everything, it was coming there 90% done, right? Then the Chinese get involved. You can look this up the same way they're doing fentanyl now. They were doing ephedrine back then. They were the place where all the ephedrine was coming from for all the meth and all the meth-based drugs, right? So they were also the place for the oil. People call it sassafras oil, but it was a step beyond sassafras oil. It just needed to be crystallized and pill pressed, and then it was good to go. So that turned into 32,000 pills a piece for us.
Well, you use multiple methods to ship drugs. There's the FedEx that we talked about, but then there's air cargo. So that's hundreds of thousands of pills.
Yeah. Well, 2.1 million pills was the bust that you mentioned at the beginning, the biggest bust in U.S. history, which it still is. There hasn't ever been a bigger one. Kind of a dubious distinction. It's like having the home run record in the minor leagues. It means you've been there for a long time. Right? Like, so anyway, yeah, but biggest bust. And we had a co-defendant of ours who's also another good guy I don't talk about too much, a Korean gentleman named Min Jin. He's the only other solid guy with me and Tamer. And he had a connection in Korean customs where we would ship shit out of Europe to LA through Korea. So we'd go into a bonded warehouse in Korea, not clear customs there, and we'd add stationery to the shipment, right? Because stationery is usually not being counterfeited, and it has paper has a good weight to it to offset the drug weight, right? So it's not like you're shipping Nike golf gloves or electronics or whatever, where cops are going to be looking for counterfeit or whatever it is, right? Stationery, nobody cares. You pay your taxes, your custom broker goes in, pulls your shit out. So this guy had somebody who had access to the bonded warehouse who could strip the paperwork and make it look like the shipment originated in Korea instead of Amsterdam or Paris. Like we could literally just fly the stuff out of Paris or Amsterdam now.
Right. There's also sea containers.
Yes.
Where you could ship up to 20 million pills, but they would potentially spoil.
Well, it depends. You know, a lot of people don't think about the container thing. We did sea containers for, 1 million pills. We had multiple things going. You know, we might have FedEx in the air, a sea container, and putting together like we did private jets also.
Right.
So, you'd have multiple things going at once, right? Like you didn't put all your eggs in one basket. But the thing about sea containers that most people don't know is you got to know what ports those ships are stopping at, right? If they're going through the Panama Canal, equator, this and that, those boxes get to be 140, 150 degrees inside. Humidity, it's just a disaster. Now everybody's like, well, I got my shit vacuum sealed. Well, when that humidity and that heat hits, there's expansion, and sometimes those bags are going to fucking pop.
Oh,
right.
You had that happen?
I didn't have that happen in this particular thing, but yeah, I've had it happen. Like I had it happen when I was much younger and we were doing weed.
Okay, so now you're shipping millions of pills through all sorts of different ways. FedEx, air cargo, ship containers, private jets. And back then, private jets were different.
Yeah, so
it's before 9/11.
Yeah, it's before 9/11. Private jets were a lot different. You had to. So here's the game, right? Like for all the pilots out there who are going to tell me that they know better than me. Back then, you called customs and you cleared, 2 hours before you landed. And people are going to say, oh, no, that's bullshit, da, da, da. But back then, you were allowed to change your flight plan after takeoff. And I don't want to get into any more details because one of the things in my case is did the pilots know or not know when this came up? And to divulge more details would answer that question. And so but you could change flight plans mid-flight back then. And where you're going to land for gas, for fuel, you could see how far away customs was. So if customs is 6 hours away from that little podunk fucking airport, then all you have to do is have somebody on the ground that's willing to take the shit off the plane. If they say, no, hold the plane, we want to come check, right? That never happened. But that's all you had to do. And so, yeah, that was a good one.
Now, you've said that you didn't like human couriers.
No. Human couriers have a mouth, they need a lawyer, and they need bail. So if you think about the anxiety that creates, the uncertainty that creates, and then you think about the capital expense to take care of them, well, why not avoid all that uncertainty? And if you lose a box, you don't have to worry about it having a mouth. And the money you were going to spend on lawyers and bail is your re-up you're already back in the game the very next day without any fucking shit on your head. So why would you ever use humans? It just doesn't make any sense.
Now, the thing that was interesting about your organization is you had a nonviolence policy.
Yeah, we weren't, I don't know that it was so much a policy, like there was, it's just we weren't, this is before the gangs had it, like even after we got busted, a couple of the cops had commented to our lawyers like, hey, the gangs have this shit now, maybe we shouldn't have taken these dudes off the street, right? Like, but, you know, listen, I was television educated, so I learned a couple things from TV. One, don't talk on the phone. And two, don't keep money and drugs in the same place. And three, violence brings police. And while, listen, there's shit that happens when you sell drugs, right? I always looked at it like if it got to that point where that's what was required, that was my mistake. So I have to think now, am I willing to risk more people to make my ego feel better about a mistake that I made by extending too much credit to someone that didn't deserve it, right? It's something you have to think about. And on most cases, we just continued doing business. We didn't have a lot of problems like that, but we decided not to get caught up in that shit.
Okay, so you were getting ripped off sometimes.
Well, I wouldn't say ripped off. I'd say like bottom line ripped off, sure. But it would be people who came back short, who wanted to work, things that would create violent situations in other more professional organizations, let's say, or more mob type organizations. But we weren't that. We never systemized it in that sense. Like we'd do shipments and then we'd go party, and we never it was never a system in the sense of like where it became an organization in that sense. What was funny is people always thought that we were capable of extreme violence. So a lot of people kind of stayed in line. And there was a little bit of violence here and there, but it never rose to the level of, having law enforcement involved or.
Well, I mean, in that game, the risk is that if you let someone rip you off, then they go around telling everyone, listen, this guy Lewis is soft. You could take him for $1 million or $2 million. He won't do anything.
Yeah,
so just go ahead and start doing that.
That didn't happen. That wasn't happening. And we're talking about 40s and 60s and stuff like that. We weren't, it wasn't stuff like that. Dude would owe 40, come back with 15 and a story, and whereas somebody else might just beat the shit out of him on the spot, I would tend to, okay, we're going to start small. Here's 1,000 more pills. Bring me the same deal that was given to me when I was in debt. I would hand that deal back. I would say, okay, here's a small amount. Bring me all the money. We'll get you a discount and we'll cut out your living expenses so that you can be all right until you pay off. And that actually, I would say 80% of the time that worked out.
Wow. Yeah, Freeway Ricky was kind of the same way. That he basically, if someone ripped him off, he just said, that's cool, on to the next deal.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the other thing. I'd meet new connects, right? And I'd be like, here's 150 grand, bring me 10 keys. And people used to say I was crazy. Like me and Tamer, we were in Amsterdam. One of my best connects over there who ended up being, really great was this guy. We used to call him the Yugo. He was Yugoslavian, great guy. And I met him and I bought 88,000 pills from him. And I gave him the cash and he just left. And then he was going to bring the pills back. And Tamer was like, what are you doing? And I was like, bro, if he's going to rip us off, I'd rather know now on a relatively small quantity without a gun in my face. And that's how I was here too. Here's 150 grand. You got kilos? Here's 150 grand. Bring me 10 of them. Because if somebody is stupid enough to rip me off, I want to know that now. Here's a dude who can hand you 150. Imagine, without a care in the world, imagine how much money you can make. If they weren't smart enough to calculate that, then 150 is cheap and that actually, we never got ripped off. I didn't get ripped off like that either.
Okay, so by 2000, you're about 31 years old. Your enterprise peaks out at like 40 million over the course of those 3 years.
Well, there was Tamer's was probably, I mean, I don't know. According to the government, like they said, 2 to 3 tons of. They said over 100 million at one point in trial, but my numbers is I think it was around 30 to 40 million.
30 to 40 million.
Yeah.
And you were sitting on 30 million in liquid cash?
I had 30 million in liquid cash at one point.
In dollars or?
Dollars.
Wow. Where do you keep $30 million?
Well, I kept 1 million in a Tiffany box that I used as a footstool in my living room.
Seriously? Okay.
Yeah, like me and my friends would laugh about it, right? Because there'd be this, it was like this Tiffany box with blue paper, the whole thing, the bow, the whole thing. And my close friends would know, but there'd be tons of people at my house for a party. There'd be people sitting on this thing and had no idea.
There's $1 million.
There's $1 million.
Okay. All right. And the other 29 million went where?
I don't answer those kind of questions.
Okay. What was the most extravagant purchase you made during this time?
So we go back to, we're in Amsterdam. We have a load coming out into Paris. Have a chase car. You have a car in front. You have the loaded lorry truck. Then you have another car behind. And then we were behind that car. The reason why you do that is if a cop tries to pull over the truck, one of the car in front or behind makes an accident, truck can get away. So I don't know, something happened. The hair on the back of my neck started to stand up. And I said, okay, let's put this in storage. And the whole company's going on vacation. So we went down to Monaco and spent a month in the south of France, this time under our own power, not with like that I was there with the time before. And I bought a Lamborghini Diablo Roadster. That was, for a month, I bought it to use for a few weeks.
And then what? Just got rid of it?
No, actually took it back to the dealership when I left. I was supposed to come back. And kind of when I was sitting in prison, I would think to myself, if I ever get to drive that car again, I'll know that everything's fine. Then the dude who ended up owning the thing, he got in trouble because he was doing one of these VAT, where they beat the government out of the VAT charges on the alcohol. It was millions and millions of dollars. He got busted, lost the whole thing, and I paid him in cash. There wasn't any paperwork on it, and so I ended up losing the car. But
well, leading up to December 7th, 2000, did you have any idea what was about to happen?
No. I knew from my lawyer that there was a warrant for my arrest. I figured, okay, I'm going to self-surrender because I was so full of myself at this time, like just so full of myself. I thought I could, again, same as situation before we talked about, where I'd never gotten into a situation that I wasn't able to handle. And I thought, oh, I can beat them. No problem. I'm going to self-surrender. They're going to give me bail. This will drag on for a couple of years. Everything will be fine in the end. Well, that's not how it worked out. I self-surrendered, and I got my first legal education that day when I went to bail hearing. And what it was when the bail hearing was happening, they were like, well, this is a presumption case. So most people don't know, but everybody thinks you're innocent until you're found guilty. But in federal court, for the purposes of bail, you can be presumed guilty and denied bail if you're looking at a sentence that could possibly give you 10 years or more.
Right.
Right? So that's, we have Clinton to thank for that. 1996 Omnibus Crime Control and Prevention Act. That was a Clinton-Biden creation, and it created a presumption of guilt for federal crimes that you're looking at more than 10 years. And that's when I knew, okay, there's a problem.
Right, because
And then they unsealed the second indictment.
Say it again?
Then they unsealed the second indictment in the same hearing.
Mm-hmm.
So then I had a CCE indictment, continuing criminal enterprise kingpin.
Right. That's the
so
big
I had
one.
two cases.
Right, but the CCE one is the big one.
Yeah.
What's the difference between a CCE and a RICO?
Well, CCE is they call it baby RICO. But RICO is more for like organized crime organizations, and CCE, while it can be included in a RICO, it stands on its own because they say that they can hit you as an individual if you've done 3 or more similar transactions, you have 5 or more people working for you, and you take the lion's share of the profits. That's what they need to prove in order to get a CCE. The other thing about it that most people don't know is at that time anyway, I don't know what it is now, but at that time anyway, the only way you can do a CCE prosecution was with the approval of the Attorney General in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
Because a CCE prosecution means no limit on hours, no limit on interagency cooperation, and no limit on what they can offer the informants in order to secure a conviction. So RICO and CCE...
Wait. No limit to what they can offer the informants
to
get a conviction. So they could pay an informant $1 million to testify against you.
Well, I don't know that they could. I don't know that their thing is payment. Their thing is time off your sentence.
Meaning that you have a life sentence and they can let you go free.
Yes.
If they're trying to get you.
Yes.
As opposed to that person.
Yeah. Just like they did with Gravano.
Yeah, Sammy the Bull.
You know, he's looking at fucking Sammy the Rat. He's looking at
multiple life sentences.
Yeah. And killed 17 people by his own admission.
19.
Yeah. And he gets off.
He gets time served.
Because he testified.
Yeah, well, no, I think he got 12 years, I think. Yeah, but still.
Yeah, I mean, Sammy's guys, did you see that Sons of Ecstasy that came out?
Yeah, I mean, I interviewed him and his son about it, yeah.
Sammy and Sean Atwood. Yeah. They were both buying from us.
Oh, were they?
Yeah, both of them.
So you were dealing with Sammy the Bull?
I was not dealing with Sammy the Bull. One of my guys was dealing with a guy by the name of Andre Wagner, who was dealing with those fucking kids out in Arizona that Sammy the Bull was working with.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is when you're in the criminal life, why I say that about Sammy is when you're in the criminal life, nobody promises you a happy fucking ending. Right? In fact, Sammy's responsible for making an unhappy ending by killing people 19 times. So no matter how stupid fucking John Gotti was for saying that shit that he said that they played for him, Gravano, because he killed people in the name of this thing, is more liable to the code to me than somebody else who didn't. Because nobody promises you a happy ending. So I really dislike that. Now, I'm not a criminal anymore. I'm not out there to go, do anything to rats or informants or this or that. Don't talk about it most of the time. But when that subject comes up, this dude was, 19 times he brought an unhappy ending where those people thought it was unfair. And by his own admission, some of them shouldn't have been killed. So how is he now all of a sudden, when it wasn't good enough for any of them to say, well, Gotti fucked me, so I'm gonna fuck the whole thing. To me, that's bullshit. He's a fucking rat. I don't give a fuck what his explanation is.
I mean, but rats are just part of the criminal system. So did you guys know about rats during this whole drug operation, and were any of them actually dealt with?
No, we got fucking bro. We were kids. We didn't fucking know shit, man. We thought we knew everything. We didn't know nothing. You learn about it quick when you get arrested and you got no bail and you get your indictment. You start getting your discovery and you learn about things like 302s and debriefings and DA7s and all the fucking shit. You see all these redacted things and you start figuring out, oh, it could only have been this guy that said this, or it could only have been that guy that said that. And then you start comparing it with other guys on your cases that haven't ratted. And now you see other guys in jail at MDC who have people who are ratting on their cases. You hear, again, you get schooled about it. For me, that was my schooling about it. And I always thought, hey, it's just talk. They never caught me with anything. Television educated. Remember, I never got caught with drugs. I never got caught with money. I never got caught on the phone. I never got caught with any of that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so
but you had a lot of witnesses that were saying that you did all this stuff.
There was a few. There was a few.
Right.
Main witnesses, Monir Deary being the main one and the biggest piece of shit. John Ibrahim and Mark Bellin. And those were the main ones at first.
Okay, so now you're sitting in jail, no bail, you're facing a CCE with a life sentence, and the DEA are all giving each other high fives because this is the largest ecstasy bust at the time in DEA history.
Yeah. It was actually, DEA was involved, but it was actually a customs case and Earnet Task Force case. U.S. Customs was the lead agency on it, but the DEA was all over it because they had a task force. And, now I'm sitting in jail with no bail. I got 2 indictments I'm looking at. And I go to speedy trial on the first conspiracy. I get found guilty. I get sentenced to 30 years.
Whoa.
And that's a motherfucker.
So you get a speedy trial. Now you're going into this knowing that the feds have a 98% conviction rate. So before that first trial, are you offered a plea deal?
Yeah, they offered me to pay them $10 million to rat. And then they offered me to rat. And actually, before they even arrested me, when they raided my house and found nothing, after the 2.1 million pills got busted, I was watching on TV. And our shit wasn't even supposed to be in. Like Tamer's, I called Tamer, and the feds had actually brought it straight from Paris into LA. It didn't go through Korea. I was like at first wondering, who the fuck's moving that kind of weight? Right? Like, and then come to find out it was, it was related to us, and that the feds, DEA, had actually brought it in directly from Paris. And, that was one of the things I brought up later. I'm like, actually, the DEA is the one who imported the drug.
Okay, so they offered
me immunity at that point when they came to my house.
If you snitched.
Yeah.
But you had to pay back $10 million?
No, this is before that. $10 million was after I was arrested.
Okay.
This is before they offered me blanket immunity, keep all my shit. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I remember Bill Linehan, he was the cop and the DEA cop. And he looked at me and he was there with this IRS dude, John Everett. And they're like, and Bill Linehan said, if you're the real deal, and I'm not saying that you are, but let's just for the sake of argument say that you are, what do you think them dudes we got locked up downtown are going to do? Because Andre Wagner, Gravano's white boy that worked with Gravano's guys, he ratted on Mike after he ran up a big tab. Monir Deary, who ended up being my rat. Right? And, it was a fucking disaster.
Okay, so you're locked up and you're heading to trial because you don't agree to a plea deal, which is a crazy situation because, once again, 98% conviction rate. Now, do you originally have a lawyer?
Yeah. Had Don Etra, who was on the short list to be the United States attorney, had gone to college with Bush, who was president at the time and had just become president, the second one. And, he was old, though. He's passed away, so I don't really want to say anything bad about him. But he was older, and he was certainly past his prime at this point. And he unfortunately, I suffered a conviction.
How did it feel? Because you're like, 32 years old at the time? So basically your whole life would have to get redone in a jail cell based on this conviction.
Yeah, it's, the worst part is hearing, when I got sentenced to 30 years, was hearing the sound that my mom made. I still hear it. Like I can hear it like it was yesterday. It was... like it's not something any son would ever want to hear come out of their mother. Like the wail, the sound, it was very animalistic. It was, and I was very arrogant, and I was very angry, and I screamed. It was reported in the LA Times, actually, that I told the judge, I was like, this was bullshit. I'll be back on appeal. I'll see you next year.
Well, you try to appeal, but you actually lost, and it was like a double jeopardy appeal?
Yeah, so now I got the second case, right?
Yeah.
CCE. So I appealed double jeopardy because I said, why should I have a second case? Like,
Same
it's
thing.
The same shit.
Yeah.
And, they brought in this ringer, Al Desert, from, not even from the Ninth Circuit. He ends up writing the opinion. Conspiracy, no conspiracy. The dude, he basically, if you look at the government's brief and then you look at the appellate opinion, they basically just cut and pasted, including all the mistakes that were in the government's brief, that we'd clearly shown them. And they basically said that one conspiracy ended in December of 99 when they arrested Mike and found the storage units and followed these girls, Sonia McDaniels and Amina Jackson, who were stealing. And they set off the trigger, so the cops bust them in the parking lot of a mall on the way back from Riverside out by the 10 freeway. They agree to continue and deliver the stuff to Mike, who they worked for. They go to Mike's building. They raid that place. They end up finding John, who lives across the street, Tamer's cousin. They raid that place. Tamer's cousin, when there's money, when they're at the door, throws fucking $400,000 down to fucking Al Mayman's place. Balcony. There's cops outside. They see it. Now they go into that place also. This is all in the worship corridor. And me and Tamer, late night, are sitting there watching this from my balcony, because I live right across the street from Sterling Towers, where Tamer was out on Beverly Glen in Wilshire. I'm literally at this building, Utama Royale, and we're sitting on my balcony watching all this go down, smoking weed, smoking joints, right? And watching him tow out the cars and everything. And, Al, they get to his house, fucking genius. He's got a book that How to Hide Your Assets, right? And in the back of the book, in the extra pages in the back of the book, he wrote down all his foreign bank account numbers. So the feds fucking get all this, another fucking genius, right? And this dude, Monir Deary, genius that he was, and this was really the key to their case, how they got it off the chart, because my PSR came back at 360 to 1,640 months. Was he had storage under a fake name, but he kept the receipts. And storage units back then were like $15, $10. Like, what are you keeping the receipts for? So the feds find the storages, and they find, a bunch of Tamer's pills, over 1 million pills there. But what they also find is all the boxes with all the FedEx labels from the last year and a half. And they all have the weights and the dates and they basically, that gave them the case and the drug weight and everything else. Because after us, they changed it to 35 times the marijuana scale. Before us, it was 1 million pills. We wouldn't have gotten anywhere near that kind of time if that's all they found. But because they were able to add up everything, right, into the conspiracy, because they had all these FedEx labels, they were able to push us off the chart. And the reason why I ended up with 30 years was because each individual count that I was charged with only carried 20 years. So there was a rule in place at that time. If you have to stack the counts to reach the guideline range, then you have to get the minimum of the guideline. So the judge had no choice. Even though he wanted to give me 1,640, he gave me 360.
Well, you said something interesting. You said you spent millions of dollars on private lawyers, but you said in Fed cases, public defenders are actually the better choice.
Yes.
Why?
So if you pick up a Fed case right now, right, like you said, 98% conviction rate. Mm-hmm. The reason why it's a better choice is you're going to get your discovery for free. You're going to see if you have a case, or if they have you dead bang. So just that, and 98% of the time they've got you dead bang, because the feds don't come unless they got you, right? So 98% of the time, you're better off just because you still have your lawyer money in your pocket. Now, if you're one of those 2% where you really have action, because this whole idea of getting a high power attorney that they're scared of where they make a better plea, that's bullshit. That's just total fucking bullshit. But let's say that that's the case, right? Well, now you're in. You've seen other dudes get sentenced. If you see somebody who had a lawyer perform really well, well, now you still got your lawyer money. You can hire that dude. But trying to guess one on the street with no personal experience or from street references, you're never, it's like I tell people all the time, when you get a speeding ticket or DUI or whatever, they're like, everybody wants a high power attorney. And I'm like, no, you don't. You want the dude that stalks the hallways at that fucking court every day. He knows every fucking clerk. He knows everybody. He knows when people are taking vacations. You want the mechanic.
Okay.
That really, I mean, you want the mechanic. I tell people, anybody who gets, my friends get a DUI or reckless driving or whatever, and they ask me, I go, bro, do yourself a favor. Go to court with no one, and you're going to find there's going to be lawyers stalking the halls trying to fucking drum up business. Those dudes are there every day.
Yeah, I remember we had this interview with Big Meech from prison, and he basically said exactly that, because him and his brother, Southwest T, both had, I think, CCE charges.
Yeah.
And he spent millions on lawyers. Drew Finling was one of his lawyers, I believe. And Southwest T ended up with just a public defender, and they both accepted a 25-year plea deal. He said, in retrospect, I should have just saved my money.
Yeah. Yeah, you should have saved your money. And then also, I think more important than a lawyer is having been through a trial and then representing myself in the CCE. I can say this, more important than a lawyer, if you have any kind of brain, is a jury selection specialist.
So those are really effective.
Don't know if they're really, I'm saying better than a lawyer in federal court. Jury selection specialist, but coupled with a mock jury. You're going to pay 12 people to sit in that courtroom as if they're the jury. They're not going to know that they're working for you. And your lawyer or your private investigator, whoever you get to set this up, right, has to be able to interact with them without letting them know that they're working for the defense.
Oh,
they could
so
be
you have a
working
fake
for
jury
either guy
and you're basically polling them to see how they
every
would
day
vote.
to see what's.
Okay.
To me, that's a much better use of $100,000 than a lawyer.
Interesting. Okay, so now you're going into your CCE trial after already being convicted.
So I
for
get
30
denied
years.
on double jeopardy, and now I have the CCE trial.
Right. And the CCE, if you had blown trial, it'd be life?
Life on top of the 30.
Okay, so at what point do you start representing yourself? Which to me sounds crazy.
So I found, me and Tamer found, so when you have a wiretap in a case, it has something called a 10-day report. So they go to the judge, hey, we need to wiretap these guys for drugs. We're going to have, and the judge says, okay, and signs the order, 30, 60 days, whatever. But every 10 days, they got to make a 10-day report to that judge. How many calls were there on the line? How many of them were drug calls? How many of them were minimized? What is minimization? Minimization is if me and you are talking about mom's birthday, they're supposed to stop listening to the call. Not for any set period of time. It could be a second, could be a minute, could be 5 minutes, could be they don't pick up again on that call. Whatever, that's not the thing. But what they have to show is that there is an active monitor there who is doing their best to try to preserve the privacy that you're entitled to from the Constitution and that other people who are not part of the warrant are entitled to as well. So that's why you can only have one monitor listening to one call at a time, right? So you get this report, and that's happening before everybody turns rat, remember, right? Well, now you have a trial, and then no wiretaps in the first case. They said there was nothing relevant on wiretap. The wiretap comes in on the second case because they have Tamer's phone's wiretap, so it's hugely relevant for his CCE, right? And But if you compare, what I'd done already is I'd compared the wiretaps with the trial transcripts in the first case of the informants, and there was tons of lies. That actually, we can get back to that, but my sentencing for the 30 years was very key to that particular point. It's how I got back on appeal on that case. So anyway, then what we did is we counted, once we got the wiretap, we looked and we said, okay, how many calls are minimized? And then we compared that to the 10-day reports. And we saw that on 8 different days, a total of 21 more calls were minimized now on the wiretap itself than were minimized according to the 10-day reports. Well, Title III says you can't have equipment that can add, edit, alter, delete, or erase. Now, I can't prove, I know it's 8 different dates, and I know it's 21 total calls more minimized, but I can't tell you which ones were done legally and which ones were done illegally. But what I can tell you is there's minimization in the middle of drug conversation, which is absolutely not supposed to happen. So I've got like kind of a prima facie showing, right?
Got it.
So I go to the lawyers, Louis Palazzo, fucking horrible. And I tell him, and he's like, oh no, you know, there's no way the government doesn't tamper with. I was like, listen, I want to go after the government. I want to call the government as a witness under the best evidence rule. And I want them to be disqualified because they have a conflict of interest now, because I want to ask them point blank when they decided to tamper with a wiretap in order to secure a conviction against me. Lawyers doesn't want to do it, I fire him. You know, like we go to court, judge is like, what's up with the attorney-client relationship? And I was like, and I was kind of funny. I said, well, Your Honor, I'm here today because I'm willing to cooperate, actually. And everybody stopped, you know, and everybody looks, I was like, whatever diploma this guy is hanging in his office that's saying he passed the bar, graduated law school, must be fake, and I'm here to help you in that prosecution.
All right, so you're making jokes in the courtroom.
Yeah.
Got it.
So anyway, you know, the judge is like, well, Mr. Ziskin, you know, I was like, Your Honor, Feretta versus USA, I'm doing this of my own free will. I understand the charges against me, and I understand the consequences of a guilty verdict. I have to be able to represent myself. The Supreme Court's already dictated that.
Right, but you have a disadvantage representing yourself because there's certain things a lawyer could do that you can't do
Like
when you're
what?
representing. Someone broke it down to me. It's like,
see, I see
a
it
lawyer could say, well, I'm not sure. You'll have to, you know, this is what my client told me, and to the best of my ability, this is what I think. Whereas when you are actually in the courtroom, you're under oath and you have to answer yourself, right? I believe that's what it's about.
Well, no.
No?
You could still make arguments. I'm not making representations. I'm poking holes in the government's theory. The government's theory of the case has a problem if every time you make them change it, right? Because their story changes. And in fact, I see it as totally opposite in the sense that lawyers are officers of the court and are bound by certain rules of decorum and procedure, whereas you as yourself are not. You can say shit. And not only that, when you're cross-examining a witness or examining a witness or talking to the jury, you're testifying without being cross-examined. You're able to build a relationship with those people, right? Like, so if you're smart, and most people, again, we're dealing with all people who got caught, so most people are not, right? They can do amazing things, but what they didn't do was get away with it. But if you're smart enough, then the benefits far exceed the drawbacks. Now, in most cases, it's true. The person who has himself for a client is a fucking idiot, right? Like, but in cases where you have the necessary gray matter to play this game, then I think the benefits, the advantages far outweigh the drawbacks. You're going to lose on procedure, but you're going to win on everything else.
Okay, so you represent yourself in the CCE. It goes to the jury.
No, I won in pretrial hearings, Frank's hearings.
Before it even hit the courtroom.
No, it's in court, but before jury.
Before jury.
Yeah. So I proved that the government tampered with a wiretap after I started representing myself.
So they threw the case out?
Well, no. They offered me a deal for everything.
Oh, aha. Because they felt that this was going to bleed into the first case if you try to appeal.
Yeah, they actually said that.
And the whole thing would get thrown out potentially?
So I came to court and I basically, after I fired the lawyers, I filed a 17C subpoena. I wanted MDC's version of the calls that weren't tampered with because they don't erase anything, right? And because some of these guys were talking on the phone from MDC and those conversations, some of them were minimized. So the government fights against that. I get it. Now I've got stuff like people saying, oh, Lewis wasn't involved in those. And Munir Deary, the main rat, saying, it doesn't matter. By the time I'm done, that kike will be responsible for everything. I got the government wrapped around my finger. I know how to get a deal. This is the type of shit they erased in order to put him on the stand.
But you got the original recording.
I got the MDC version of the recording. The DEA version of the recording didn't have that on there. It was minimized in the middle of drug conversation. So I got that, and then I came to the judge and I was like, okay, what I said, I wanted under the best evidence rule, I wanted to call the government as witnesses in order. I did what the government does. I just made an indictment. See, the government wants you to piecemeal everything. Rule 16, discovery motion, sealing motion, this, that, the other thing. But when they come at you, they just hit you with a whole indictment and 9, 10, 15 counts and say all these things, and then they get to backfill. So I did what they did. I came to the judge and I said, okay, under the best evidence rule, I'm going to call the government to the stand so that they could testify about when they decided to tamper with the wiretap in order to put these witnesses on the stand to pervert it. And the government's big objection was he's fighting his appeal right now. And the judge looked at me and she said, well, what about that? And I said, Your Honor, absolutely it benefits my appeal, but the government is trying to hoodwink the court here and it's relevant to this case. And she's like, well, I need to hear how that is. And I was like, because if they had disclosed these wiretaps in the first trial like they should have, then those witnesses that they're going to bring into this court would have already been impeached. Now, had they already been impeached and proven to lying in the first trial, before they sat down in the witness box, you would be instructing the jury that they are known liars and had been impeached already on this subject matter. But because the government lied, kept it a secret, and tampered with the wiretap in order that they might get away with it, they're going to come in here as clean witnesses, and the only thing that you're going to be able to do is the standard Ninth Circuit jury instruction, which is after everybody rests, you're going to tell them to view their testimony with greater caution. I said, that's how it's relevant, and that's why it matters to this case, but absolutely it helps my appeal. And the judge said, okay, you have to make a prima facie showing of these things that you're claiming of tampering with the wiretap and corruption before I can decide whether I'm going to allow you to call the government to the stand. You can't just do it like that. And so she backed me in basically to a Frank's hearing, which is what everybody tries to get and nobody gets. And she said, I'm going to give you your case agent, Bill Linehan, and the head of DEA wiretaps, John Radkowski. We'll have an evidentiary hearing, and once that's done, then we'll see how much further I allow this to go. Okay, cool. We get back to the unit. Me and Tamer are super excited. I start buying all the Arabic dudes who were in there. They were all there on Fedrin cases. I paid them all to get their line sheets. What's a line sheet? It's a summary of your wiretap call. It says, a summary of it, if there was minimization, the times, the date, everything, but also it says the monitor number. So I found on multiple calls, the same monitor listening to different wiretaps at the same time, which is a fucking no-no. Impossible. So, and they have this T2S2 machine, which according to the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, the optical disc that they burn and hand you a copy is not the original recording, it's the hard drive. So they're overwriting all their original recordings, which they're supposed to be sealing at this time. So get all this out. They have a trunking system, all fucking kinds of shit, right? Translation, transcription too is what T2S2 did. Now we found out about that because Tamer and me had a paralegal who went down to Mexico. We found out who manufactured the machine, Converse Info Systems. We found out Mexico had it. We sent the investigator down to Mexico. We paid for the fucking operations manual of it, and then it had it translated to English. And this is how we figured out how this fucking machine works, right?
Crazy.
So anyway, we get to court that day. And this is it. This is the big day. Our family's there. You know, I'm representing myself. This is going to be the first time where there's substance to it, right? Like it's an actual Frank's hearing. It's not like a status conference. It's not a, you know, say a few words back and forth between the prosecutor about technical shit. It's fucking, here we go. We're going to have examination and cross-examination. And you know, Tamer's sitting there in handcuffs. I have my hands free because I represent myself. Still have the leg irons on. And Tamer's lawyer comes up to me and says, hey, do you want to, do you want to go over your questions? And I was like, no. He's like, do you have a notepad? And I was like, no, I'm going to shoot this one from the hip, Dave. I said that to Tamer the night before. He was asking me, hey, bro, are you going to do? Because I was drinking, watching NBA at the Black TV the night before the fucking hearing, drinking Pruno. And Tamer was pissed. He's like, bro, are you going to be... What the fuck did I was like, T, I got this. I'm going to shoot it from the hip, dude. But I knew everything. I'd been living this for a year and a half, fucking reading this shit every night. I knew it. So anyway, I tell Chesnoff, I'm like, you're going to ask some questions for me. And he's like, no, I have to go after you. You have to go first. I have to clear this up. David Chesnoff was Tamer's lawyer. I was like, no, you work for fucking Tamer and you're going to go first. And I'm going after you and you're going to ask these questions. And they're about firmware and this and that. And he's like, I don't understand. I don't want to ask questions. I don't know what they mean. Da, da, da. And I was like, and I looked at Tamer and I said, Tamer, tell him. And this is a moment of truth for Tamer, right? Like up until this point, it's like right along, we're together, but this is the moment where he has to fully commit to this. Cause you got to remember, they're offering him to rat on me and go home at this time. Right? They're offering me to rat on him and go home at this time. Right? Like, so there's no stepping back. The Rubicon's about to be crossed. And Tamer fucking tells Chesnoff, yeah. And so Chesnoff gets up there, cross-examines Everett, and, comes back and, oh, I got him to admit he didn't sign his affidavit. Did you see that? And I've read all the appellate cases from the Daily Appellate Review, which is how I taught myself the law. And I'm like, that doesn't mean shit, Dave. But thanks, you did what I need you to do. Anyway, I get up there and I'm talking to Radkowski and I was like, so, Title III, you can't have equipment that can add, edit, alter, delete, or erase. He's like, yeah. I was like, wouldn't it be more accurate to say that the hardware can do it that you possess, but there's a firmware that protects against it happening? And he admitted, yeah, right away, which is already... Title III doesn't say you can have it as long as you have firmware. It says you can't have it. Can't spend federal money on equipment that can do it, right? First of all. So that actually went pretty easy. So anyway, then I'm asking him about, this firmware and these protections. And I'd had Chesnoff ask him a couple questions about firmware and monitors and this and that. And I was like, so what you're saying is it can't be tampered with because of this firmware, the same firmware that protects against a monitor listening to more than one call at the same time. And he says, yeah, exactly. I said, oh, permission to approach. And I had the line sheets. And the judge's like, okay, I gave them to him. I was like, do you know what those are? He's like, yeah, these are line sheets from wiretaps. And I was like, are you familiar with any of them? He's like, no, but they're all kind of the same. Well, I was like, well, will you notice the date on there and the times? I was like, do you notice that they're all overlapping dates and times? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, can you look at the monitor number on all three of those line sheets? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, can you read it to the court? And he read it. And I was like, how about the other two? Well, it's the same. Oh, you mean a monitor is listening to more than one call at the same time? I guess your firmware ain't working. Pandemonium. The prosecutor's like, oh my God, we don't know if this stuff is real, this, that, the other thing. I'm like, Your Honor, if it's not real, I'll plead guilty to this sheet. It's government bait stamped, open plea. So this is government generated material. Anyway, judge gives him a continuance. And then we go back to court to finish up a few weeks later. They haven't addressed that yet, but I want to get, we want to finish with the case agent because I'm still thinking I might end up in trial, but I want to get this guy on as much testimony as I can. I don't know that there's really anything big that can happen, but the more I can get him to speak, the harder it'll be for him to twist his shit when we're actually at trial, right? Because he's on the record. So anyway, Moorbacher examines him. Chesnoff cross-examines him. I cross-examine him. Really don't get much. And then Gene Moorbacher, the prosecutor, says, hey, I want to redirect. And the judge looks at her and goes, maybe you just want to leave it alone. I'm like, what the fuck? What am I missing? Right? And no, I just want to redirect. So she goes in, he's a professional. She's burnishing his credentials and all the work he did. And he says, and she's like, and what was your job in the case? And what does a case agent entail? And he's like, and then he says, I listened to all the calls. I was like, listen to all the calls? Oh my God. During, while they're happening, during the investigation. I'm like, okay. So as soon as she's done, I'm like, recross. And she's like, it's not your turn. And Chesnoff, Mr. High Power, fucking big money, $1 million attorney, totally fucking missed it. So he's like, no, I got nothing. I was like, okay. I get up there and I start fucking with him. I'm like, so you're an officer of the court. You have arrest powers. You have to do training. You do firearm training. You do government's like, Your Honor, is there a point here? Da, da, da. I was like, yeah, I'll get to it, Your Honor. It's coming. And just keep fucking with him about that, questioning his credentials, questioning his training, questioning everything. And I go, and then you listen to some of the calls. And he's like, no, I listened to all the calls. And I go, oh, didn't I see you at my first trial? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, you were there when the witnesses were testifying in the first trial, right? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, you have arrest powers. Like, you're actually an officer of the court, even though you're a federal agent. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, and you listened to all the calls. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, why didn't you tell the judge that they were lying when they were on the stand? Pandemonium again. Government's like, objection. Judge overruled, told him to answer. And he's like, no answer. And then she's like, okay, I'm going to have to be briefed on sanctions. And I was like, oh, I'll do that. She's like, oh, you get to do that too, Mr. Ziskin, no problem, right? Like, and then the government, came. They called my appeal attorney, Chuck Sevilla, who's the greatest, by the way. Fantastic. I don't have much good to say about attorneys, but this guy is a fantastic human being. I write him a letter every Thanksgiving for helping me as much as he did. And so they call him. He, because they can't call me directly, obviously. They call him and they say, hey, we want to make a deal. And he's like, look, I got to take whatever deal you bring to Ziskin because that's the law. But he's not going to cooperate with you. And they're like, no, we'll make a deal just for time. So they offer me 20 years for everything. Now I got 30 already. I'm looking at life. They're offering me 20. I said no, 17 and a half, no, 15 and a half. And no further prosecutions.
So a little less than half of what you got convicted of.
Yeah, and the life case is gone.
Aha, no life.
15 and a half for everything.
Half of your original conviction.
Yeah, the sentencing transcript I sent you, if you look at it, it's for both cases. 0024 RSWL and 00852 CAS. So I got one sentencing for both cases, all under a C1C plea agreement, which is what's called a locked deal. I mean, the judge has to agree to that before I plead guilty. Anyway, my appeal attorney, Chuck Sevilla, appeals, direct appeal, and he says, hey, now over the next few months before I have to turn my appeal in, we do find hundreds of lives, literally. The brief is pretty amazing, right? So he appeals to the Ninth Circuit based on that, and the government says, no, it's not part of the record. Ziskin needs to wait for 2255, habeas corpus. And my appeal attorney in response brief says, why should the government get that benefit, and why should my client be penalized because the government lied and withhold evidence? It's much harder to win. The standard of review for 2255 is much harder to win than direct appeal. So this is a windfall for the government, and it's damaging to my client. And the Ninth Circuit said, you're both wrong. The judge committed clear error when he refused to look at the wiretaps. And we're ordering a limited remand 10E to have the wiretaps, now all of them, put in the record so that Ziskin can argue them on direct appeal. Now, at the same time, the evidentiary hearing is happening in the second case. So all of it comes together at the same time. They offer 15.5, no further prosecutions. I didn't want to take it. Chuck sent me 2 cases of guys who had, cases where the misconduct wasn't even as bad as mine, and they got off. And he sent me 2 drug cases where the misconduct was worse than mine, and the guys were still sitting in prison.
Okay.
So I took the deal.
15 and a half years.
Yeah, 15.
And you're 34 years old at the time.
Yeah, and I have 3.5 years in at that time. So I'll be home in less than 10.
Right.
It's good time.
So you ended up basically doing 12 years?
I did 12. I was 13 years in custody, but I don't count the last year because that's halfway house and home confinement. You're not behind the wall anymore.
Got it.
So it was 12 in and then a year of halfway house and home confinement.
How did it feel to walk out? You were 43 at the time?
Yeah. Actually, I just turned 44.
44 years old.
I think I just turned, was it 43 or 44? No, I think it was 43.
Right.
Because I got released to the halfway house on October 18th, the day after my birthday. October 17th, 2012. And bro, when I got walked out, I was in Coleman, Florida, because I did the drug program there. So I got a year off the sentence for doing the drug program. And when I was walking out, I swear I was like worried that the feds were going to jump out of the bushes and give me a new case. Because you hear horror stories about guys getting released and walking right into a new case. Like it was a little bit of anxiety, and then jumped in the car with the girl who came to pick me up. We took off to the airport. I got Outback Steakhouse. I'd gotten tickets that took us through Mall of America with a huge layover so we could get a hotel room. And then jumped on the plane to LA, got to the halfway house that night. Dad picked me up from the airport and took me to the halfway house.
Okay, so now you're out and you start on your next venture in 2015, DropIn Inc.
No, before that I built some spec homes in Encino for my brother. My brother financed them, and me and Tamer built 3 of them. We did really well with those. And then, I got the bug. Like, I wanted to be in tech because I looked at all the people that had the lifestyle that I had before I got locked up, and it was tech people now, right? It wasn't drug dealers anymore. These dudes are doing the same shit that we were doing in the 90s. And so I wanted to do that. And I was actually at the dentist, and there was the FAA proposed regulations for commercial drone pilots. And, I don't even know why that was sitting there instead of a magazine, but it was like dense material that only a convict would be interested in reading, because when you're locked up, you're looking for the densest shit you can find, right? I start reading it, and they're like, okay, the pilot has to be over 400 feet, can't go over 400 feet, and has to maintain line of sight. So I realized right away, okay, you don't need to control the drone. You just need to control the guy who's controlling the drone. And that's where the idea for DropIn came, that you would live stream from a drone. So a remote third party could tell the pilot, fly right, fly left, hold there, let me take a picture, let me this or that. And, we took it to the insurance market first. Actually, the first idea was, anybody who wants to see anything live anywhere, right? But then I learned you got to kind of focus your market. And I wasn't going to advertise for guys to see if their girlfriend's car was parked at home at night. So we went to the insurance space where, hey, instead of sending people up on a ladder to check a chiller, they'll use this. Like, hey, it makes sense and you can dispatch them. And then we ended up doing the same thing for camera phones. So you could do inside the house also. And then we got a partnership with Lyft. And then we got accepted into the Lloyd's network in London. And then I got into Forbes Digital for Prison to Forbes in 5 years for, being the poster child for rehabilitation. And, Lloyd's is one of the most conservative, stuffy. Their insurance market is, very, very stuffy like that. And the fact that they had someone like me that was in there and partners with Lyft and everything, and it was going great. I mean, it was really going well until COVID came. The company was doing well. We had good offer for it, $22 million. At that time, when COVID started, people started adopting it like crazy, and so the hockey stick was really starting to take off. And I had this great guy, Joseph Shemesh, who was the CEO. I've been trying to get out of the front line of it because while the story was good for people, people typically don't want to sign contracts with a convict, right? I was the novelty friend. Everybody wanted me at their party. Everybody wanted me at their event. But, nobody wants to actually do business in public. So, while I got the company off the ground, and it was a lot of work, I was also created a headwind. So I was always trying to find a CEO to take over, right? And Joseph was actually a tech guru also. So he was the CTO and the CEO. He was the fourth one I tried to have. And it was going great, and he was doing great. And then everything was going good. We got an offer. We decided not to take it because our usage was skyrocketing. And then we got into the logistics for medical devices, gloves, masks, when the COVID thing broke.
Right. And then a situation happened in Thailand.
Yeah. So we did masks. We got airqueen.com. We did favors for companies, states. Hey, we're being backlogged 5 months. 5 weeks before we can get our stuff out of China. Everybody thought that was because China's trying to fuck us over. China might be trying to fuck us over in a bunch of different ways, but not by holding their products from being shipped here. What they do want to do is ship as many of their products as they can, as fast as they can over here. Mm-hmm. What people didn't understand is because there was so much density of orders, there's a doorway that goes from FedEx into customs or UPS into customs, right? Like there's a doorway that these trucks back up to that in order to take stuff into warehouses. From a physics point of view, there is literally only so much stuff that can go through these openings in a 24-hour period. And the amount of product that China had was so massive that's what was causing the problem is the transit companies couldn't process the stuff into customs fast enough. China didn't have a manpower shortage. So the key thing was, if you wanted to cut down your time, is you got to find somebody on the ground there that works there. And I had Chinese connections, who could take your stuff from the back of the line and move it to the front. That was it. Mm-hmm. And you could save yourself weeks. And then the other thing that people didn't know, if they weren't in the logistics business or the drug business, everybody was trying to go on every boat from China to America, to LA or San Francisco or wherever, whatever port, they thought was available. Well, I was like, look, transship. Korea ain't getting shipped from China right now. Send the ship from China to Korea. And nobody was hip to the Korean medical market yet, and Korea wasn't letting any of their stuff be exported yet while they were getting under control. So we transship through Korea, which is a little bit of a headache and it'll take a couple extra days, but you're going to get a fast boat and it's going to actually get here 10 days faster. So you're going to save, 10 days, 11 days off shipping time, and you're going to save weeks on the thing. So we got into that. And then Min Jin, my friend who had the Korean connection, who also went to trial, he went to trial after me and Tamer took the deal. He ended up getting convicted. He got as much time as me. He did 12 years. Anyway, we were locked up together at a couple different places. Anyway, he got deported back to Korea. He sends me this Air Queen mask, which is amazing. I try it on, and we started importing them. And we bought the airqueen.com URL for $10,000. And, we were importing them from this company, Top Tech in Korea, and everybody loved them. And what they was instead of a emergency use authorization, they actually had a K number, N95 substantial equivalent. So we were doing great. And then, started selling to Formula One, started selling to the NBA, selling to Cedars-Sinai, selling to Augusta Medical, like legit clients. CDC bought from us, right? And it all started because we didn't want to, everybody then was like, oh, I got 10 million of this and proof of life of that and this, and they're all full of shit. They're all sitting around talking about these multi-million-dollar business deals all day long on the phone. We were like, hey, we got them in our warehouse and we'll sell you a 10-pack. So people buy 10, they buy 20, they buy 100. Everybody's got a relative or something. They actually get their stuff 2-3 days later, gets shipped the same day. And that's where our big deals came from, was from the B2C business. Our actual customers are telling their friends, family, and relatives who are in the space. So then these bigger clients start coming to us. It's going really well. And then ultimately they start asking us for other stuff, including nitrile gloves.
Right.
Which brings us to the Thailand thing.
Exactly. So you end up wiring $2.72 million to a Taiwanese company.
Yeah.
To purchase medical gloves.
Yeah.
But when the gloves came, they weren't exactly nitrile gloves. There was latex gloves. They were painted blue. There was blood stains on them. It was just a complete
disaster. They were Chinese
disaster.
medical waste.
Yes. Chinese medical waste.
Yeah, Chinese medical waste.
Wow.
So what happens?
That you bought for $2.7 million.
Yeah. And so what happens the reason why they bothered to send that instead of just ripping off the money because they already had it, is because in Thailand, if they send you any glove, then it's a quality issue. It's fraud. It's not a criminal issue.
Ah, okay.
Right?
It's a civil case, not a criminal case.
Yeah. So what they do is, and also the law there, they have a free port there. So you bring stuff in from China and you package it there with fake medical boxes, counterfeit medical boxes from Sri Trang. Package it there. It's a product of Thailand. So you circumvent tariffs, customs, all that stuff. And product of Thailand, it gets shipped to America. Now, on those same routes, that was the same routes they were shipping drugs, humans, and fake EpiPens to kids in Africa. So, we ran into a fucking hornet's nest there. But, yeah, we sent them 2.7, and first container arrived, and it was all bogus. And then me and Tamer go down to U.S. Customs in Long Beach. We're like, hey, there's 3 more containers on the water. And we need to withdraw our importer security filing because this is a medical device and it's no longer, we know that it's not what we said it is on the ISF. And they're like, okay, send us an email. And I'm like, what? You got the Attorney General talking about War Powers Act over this PPE shit, right? We were halfway thinking they're going to arrest us until they get it figured out. So I'm like, bro, look, run my name, run his name, and get someone down here. Anyway, they run our name, and supervisor comes down, and he says the same thing. He's like, yeah, just write an email there. So we get we write an email. They don't even give you a return response. So we write them an open email that we publish also, telling them because we want proof that we tried to do the right thing, and they do nothing. And then King and Spalding, who was DropIn's lawyer we were trying to lobby to get states and federal government to use the technology for 911 and child protective services and parole. So, hey, you don't have to go out and drive anymore. You can, every child protective services call, you could see what's happening in the house right away without driving. So it's a manpower multiplier, force multiplier. We told them, and they called the FBI, wrote letters, FDA, Criminal Investigation Division, Customs, everybody, and nobody did anything. And then these 3 containers that we'd given them the bills of lading, what did they do when they arrived here? They delivered them to us after they'd already been told what it is.
Okay, so basically you have no legal recourse.
Well, we did. There was legal recourse in Thailand. But Thailand was under quarantine, but then they made this thing where if you did 14 days quarantine there, you could get in.
Right.
So we took off to Thailand.
Right. So you put together a team to try to get your money back.
Yeah.
With an Israeli private investigator, a U.S. Marine turned security contractor, and an expat who had also been defrauded through PPE schemes. So you pretty much have like a squad of guys.
Yeah, there was a lot more guys than that.
More guys than this?
Yeah.
Okay. And you guys pretend to be buyers with the guy that ripped you off. And during the meeting, you end up kidnapping him?
So that's what they said. But if you look at the video, they say that I'm the guy in the black hat with the black shirt. That video is totally faked. Totally faked. That's how I won the case. Like, we went there, I reported fraud. Yes, something happened with that dude, which I'm not going to get into because
according
still
to
Thai guys there. But
hold on. According to the reports, they said there's a physical confrontation that erupted with your team and this guy Vincent. You guys grabbed him and put him in a safe house.
Yeah. So in that video on that day and that time, that did not happen. If you look at that video that they're referring to, you see cops actually sitting there.
Okay.
This was totally faked.
Okay.
They did that because we had convinced him a week before to give back half the money. So then they got a dirty cop and this dude Sirishai and made this whole fake case, which is totally fake.
So you never kidnapped him?
I'd never kidnapped.
Okay.
I wasn't even there.
Right. But
and the judge found that 84 days later when they could present zero evidence. They supposedly had all this video, all this, that. I had a picture of the day that Vincent claims that we did this to him, right? The day that he claims that we did this to him, there's a picture of him drinking whiskey in another restaurant.
Okay.
Now, did something happen between us and them several days before this incident that they created?
Which is why he agreed to pay back half the money?
Yes.
Okay. So
something happened.
Something
Yes.
happened.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, but then they made this whole fake thing in order to extort me for money. So we get arrested. Me, Jay, all bunch of Thai guys, bunch of everybody. And, the cop, Super Chai, he's like, they tried to extort us for the money plus 450 grand. And I was like, I ain't giving, what makes you think, if I'm the guy you say I am, what makes you think that I would do that? And he's like, oh, we know everything about you, this, that, the other thing. Everything's drugs, drug gangster, this, all the press was set up through News Flare. They released it from the Royal Thai Police. It got picked up like wildfire everywhere, 100% hit pieces. Nobody fucking asking. Everybody, even Grant Peck from the AP wrote asking for comment. I wrote him back right away. I said, yeah, I have comment and I have evidence. All of them. They fucking all just ignored it. I even have an email from them that proves it. Hey, I'm sorry. Usually people don't write us back. I just didn't check, but you did. You answered right away. Tons of fucking, all just their bullshit. And then 84 days later, King leaves. Me and Tamer talk for the next couple of nights, and I decide to get arrested because now we know that our shit is small potatoes. We also know that on the cosmic scale of things, this has scale that's similar to what we did in drugs. And that Thailand is shipping into the American medical system using its military and less than reputable members of the Chinese mafia, Chen family, to ship medical waste into the United States every month more than their annual production capacity. That's how much it was. I mean, hundreds of millions of gloves, billions of gloves. So we're like, okay, me and Tamer figured the embassy is going to come the minute a U.S. citizen gets arrested, and I'll give them all this information. I'll get flown out of here on a plane with no tail number, right? Embassy still hasn't come to see me. King's the one who did get us all bail Monday morning. And then, we had to stay there for 84 days because it was attempted murder charge. And at the end of 84 days, the judge said, well, where's the evidence? And they had none because it wasn't me in the video. That whole video that they made all these stories out of and everything was totally fucking fraud.
Right. Ultimately, Thailand did not prosecute.
Yeah. And released me.
And released
and
you.
Jeremy and all of us.
Now, the $2.72 million, how much of that did you get back?
We got back half.
Okay, so you got the half back. But I guess he's still trying to, get that half back from you?
Yeah, that's why they did all that.
Got it. But ultimately, you get to keep your half.
Yeah, but, bro, with the expenses and the fact that my tech company lost 60% of its customers overnight when that press came out, and then trying to follow up lawsuits against all this press when I got back, it was a huge net loss for me. It crashed my tech company to the point where it didn't exist anymore. And, on a personal financial thing, it was just worse than starting at zero. It was, all the drug trafficker shit was back. It was no longer rehabilitation. It was violence. It was, just all the horrible human stuff, and so I had to start over, not just financially, but rehabilitation-wise.
Yeah. Well, Louis, quite a story. Ups and downs, wins and losses, but, you're still here, 55 years old, you look great, you're healthy, pulled up in a Bentley, live in Beverly Hills, so things aren't so bad these days.
I'm lucky my friend loaned me a car to come out here.
Well, appreciate you sharing your story, man. Wish you all the best, and I feel like your story's far from over.
Thank you.
That's what it is.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time.
All right,
Peace.
brother.